So thanks very much.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Martin. Thanks to you and Katya for organising this conference. It's great to be able to speak at it and to be among some great talks as well. So as Martin says, I'm work for CoolLED, so I'm one of the field sales managers there. So I look after all our customers in the UK and Ireland. So I just thought I'd do a kind of 15-minute presentation today on calcium imaging applications using LED illumination. So I'll give you a brief introduction to CoolLED, and Martin kind of set it quite up nicely then. And I'll talk a bit about our LEDs and the benefits of using LEDs, which is the work we do. And then a little bit of a talk about our P340 Fiora system, which is specifically for calcium imaging. And then look at a few examples from a few of our customers around the world where they're using that 340 Fiora system. And then it'll be tied up nicely. So if you're not familiar with CoolLED, as Martin said, we specialize in LED systems, typically for fluorescence microscopy. So we've been around since around 2006, and we've released the P1 back then. And since then, we've hosted and created a lot more products ranging from with various different applications. And as I said, the one I'll talk about today is the P340 Fiora, specifically for calcium imaging. But CoolLED are based in the UK. We're based in Andover in Hampshire, which is about an hour west of London. Not too sure where Andover is. And we do a lot of research, development, kind of everything from there. There's about 45 people there. We have a couple of people in the US covering our American customers, looking after them, and one based in China looking after our Chinese customers. So we're a growing business. We've come a long way since 2006, and it's really great to be part of kind of a growing calcium area as well. At CoolLED, we fully focus on LEDs, and there's many reasons for this, but the reason we work with LEDs is because they're fast replacing mercury and metal halide bulbs in more traditional methods of fluorescence microscopy. So when you buy an LED to replace a mercury lamp, you're not just replacing a lamp. Like a mercury lamp is quite dumb, there's not much going on with it. But with LEDs, you're providing a filter, attenuator, shutter, and sequence generator, as well as the kind of light itself. So you get more kind of use out of an LED than you would just a single bulb. And lots of nice benefits for this. So one is it's mercury free. So with mercury bulbs, it's a kind of health and safety nightmare sometimes. You need extractor fans. If a mercury bulb blows, you need to evacuate kind of labs and things. There's no mercury in LEDs at all. So it's much, much safer. With LEDs as well, it's a really long lifetime you get in these units. We typically say about 20,000 hours or so in terms of the on time. And you get instant on off with LEDs as well. When you come to use it, you turn it on and it works. You turn it off when you're done with it. With mercury, it has about 20-30 minute warm up time and cool down time. So typically they're left on throughout the day, might be 8 hours or so. Even if you're only using it for an hour or two, just because people don't want to work with the long warm-up time and cool down time with that. The mercury bulbs as well only have about 200-300 hours lifetime before they start getting really dim. So if you're using it for 8 hours a day, after just a couple of months, you might need to replace this. With LEDs, they're going to work for kind of many years, even if you're using them for several hours each week or each day even. And you get a huge power saving on this as well. Of course, if you're only using it for the time that you actually want to, maybe just a couple of hours each day, you're not having it on the whole day like with mercury. And they run much lower power than mercury as well. So you're going to get a green saving as well as a cost saving in electricity by using LEDs. I guess back at the start when we started using them in 2006 or so, the LEDs weren't as bright and as powerful as they are now. They were much weaker than a mercury lamp. But now they're much more intense. They're intense and even much brighter than mercury at some wavelengths as well. I think a lot of the worries about LEDs in the past was, were they intense enough, and they're more than good enough now for what people are needing. Another benefit is they're controllable, so you can control the intensity of the LEDs. With mercury lamps, you need filters and things like that to try and stop photo bleaching of samples. So the controllability of the LEDs really kind of helps that aspect of your experiment as well. One really key feature of them as well is they're very stable. With LEDs, when you turn them on, you get pretty much negligible change in terms of the intensity output of the light. With mercury, you get about a % change over 10 minutes or so, and it's constantly fluctuating throughout experiments. When you're looking at ratiometric calcium imaging, this kind of stability is really key with LEDs. So as I mentioned, our P340 Fura is specifically designed for kind of Fura 2 ratiometric calcium imaging. And in this unit, we have 3 LEDs, one at 340 nanometers, one at 380 nanometers, and a third white LED covering from around 430 to 650 or so nanometers for any other typical dyes which people use. Because if you're on a microscope, you're looking at certain dyes, you don't want to take it to another microscope then to look at other dyes with different wavelengths available to you. So you can do kind of everything on the same microscope with the same system. So it gives you that flexibility, whether you're doing the ratiometric calcium work or working with other dyes. But the unit itself, there's lots of benefits to using this for calcium work. So you get 3-channel USB control. So you can control all the LEDs via USB. We're integrated into a variety of softwares, Olympus CellSense, Nikon Elements, Metamorph, Micromanager, lots of different camera softwares as well. So there's not a standalone software which you need to use. It can be kind of integrated into whatever you're currently using as well. And this gives kind of triggering time for the LEDs on-off time of around 100 milliseconds. Sorry. To get faster than this, we have TTL control on the unit as well. So you have 4 TTLs, so BNC connections on the back of the unit, 3 for each of the individual LEDs, and a 4th global one to trigger them all on or off. There's a nice feature called a sequence runner on the P340 Fura, which I'll talk about in a second as well. Inside the unit, you have 3 filter holders, so 1 for each of the LEDs. So it comes with a 340 and a 380 nanometer filter just to kind of clean it up, give a much better signal to noise ratio with that. And with this as well, it means with excitation filters inside the unit, you're not having to change them inside filter turrets and things like that inside the microscope. So you're reducing vibration. Obviously, if you're looking very small areas, you want to try and reduce vibration so you're not seeing movement between your images on the camera. And the unit can be fitted directly onto the back of a microscope. So this is just sits on the back. Or if you're in a Faraday cage or anything like that and want to reduce electrical noise, you can fit it via a liquid light guide. So it can sit a couple of meters away, and we have this fiber going from the unit into the back of the microscope, and just reducing vibration again even more if needs be. And the unit's obviously working with LEDs around 340 nanometers. You're working with UV. So the unit has been optimized to work with these UV lights. Obviously, you need good transmission. So rather than kind of standard glass, which doesn't transmit UV very well, it's been optimized to work in that kind of region in UV. So when we were looking to kind of create a unit for calcium imaging, we looked at everything you needed for to do calcium imaging, especially ratiometric calcium imaging, and try to incorporate that into the system. So you got the fast switching via the TTL, so down to 20 microseconds. Get good temporal resolution. You can synchronize it with a camera via the TTL. Low noise, high accuracy. So it kind of hits all the key points which we kind of discussed with customers who wants to use it. And hopefully you'll see if you've used it that it kind of meets all these points that you might want. So one really nice feature on the unit is the sequence runner, as I briefly mentioned. So on the back of the unit, you can see in the image here, you've got 4 TTLs, so 1 for each of the individual LEDs. And typically, if you want to kind of trigger them individually, 340, then a 380, you'd need 2 TTL connections onto this. And typically, you'd need some kind of other hardware to create the signals so you can synchronize it to the camera. And this can be kind of expensive and time-consuming to set up if it's not been done before. But using the global trigger on the back, you can then use the sequence runner function. So you connect a TTL from your camera or another TTL output into this global BNC. And on your control pod, you can say which LEDs you want to come on at what time. So if you're doing ratiometric calcium, you want the 340 and the 380 to come on one after another in kind of syncing with a camera. So as the camera takes its first exposure, the 340 LED will turn on. It'll turn off when the camera stops exposing. When the second image is taken, the 380 LED will turn on, then off third image, the 340 again, and 380 and so forth. And that's just with a single BNC connection. It's going to be a nice cost-saving feature to use this as well. This is just a quick video, hopefully that'll run in time, showing you can see the single BNC connection on the back of the unit there, connecting to the global trigger. And we can see two different LEDs just triggering one after another from that single TTL. You might just be able to see if you squint the control pod flicking between the two there as well. So it's a nice feature which comes with that. That's a little bit about the unit itself, a little bit about why we're working with LEDs. So I'll just run through a few different applications where we've got customers working with it. So let's say it's got the 3 LEDs, so obviously people working with the ratiometric calcium, but that third LED also comes in use as well. So the first one is Professor Dongki Yang, who's at Gashon University in South Korea. And the research Professor Yang's doing is in the effects of air pollution on the human body. So the effects of air pollution becoming more obvious, and scientific evidence will kind of help guide governments towards trying to cut emissions to reduce this air pollution. So here we have an example of research looking at calcium signaling as part of a response of human skin and airway lining cells due to diesel particulate matter. Researchers here have been using the P340 fluoride to measure calcium influx and follow signaling pathways which control the cell. And this is not to only document the effects, but to discover the therapies against these as well. And in South Korea, especially in Seoul, there's kind of high air pollution. So working with this kind of thing is quite apt in this area as well. Second application is from Alexandru-Florian at CHUV in Lausanne in Switzerland. So he's using the P340 Fura for quite a range of applications. So he's using the 340 and 380 nanometers for Fura 2 calcium imaging. And this is to investigate the cross communication between neurons and macrophages or satellite glial cells by quantifying calcium waves. But he's also using the third white LED to perform optogenetic experiments. And this is using channel rhodopsin and archaeorhodopsin as well. So the main area is to look at the painful medical conditions and find out more about them. So he's had the benefits of using the P340 Fura, so the quick triggering with the TTL, and he's integrated that into camera software to get it kind of integrated into his system as well as possible. And he's then got the kind of adjustment of the intensity as well to change that to whatever he's needing be, whether it's using the calcium imaging or channel rhodopsin and things like that. Then we also have Dr. Kyu-Sang Park, and he's at Yonsei University. So he's looking at understanding mitochondrial stress self-defense. So mitochondrial dysfunction is known to be the main cause of many major diseases, things like cancer, obesity, diabetes, hypertension. So investigating these is kind of quite wide-ranging consequences. It covers a huge range of diseases there. So it's an important application, and using ratiometric calcium imaging is a great way to study this. So it can be used to help identify the molecular mechanisms of the self-defense and can therefore aid in the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of these type of diseases across the globe. So again, it's using the 340, 380 with TTL for the quick triggering to get some really nice data from there. And the aim of this work from Dr. Park is to kind of help contribute to metabolic improvement and health promotion. And obviously the end goal being a longer life for everyone. It's a really important field of study that he's looking at with that. So unfortunately, I'm not an expert in these applications. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to share them with me, and I can get you in contact with the end users and help where I can as well. But yeah, happy to take any questions. I don't know if there's any in the chat box there. But yeah, again, thanks for listening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here. And yeah, it's been a really interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, can hear you.
Great. Okay, so we do have a couple of questions, comments. So from Robert Hartley, we have, with the sequence runner, I assume you can synchronize with a signal out from a camera to change LEDs.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So the single TTL out from the camera into the back of the unit, you can change whichever LEDs you want to use. So whether that's just the 340 and the 380, or just the white, you can trigger it and sync that with the camera.
Okay. I've got another comment. Ian, if you're ready, would you like to start your presentation? Then we can go straight into that. Sorry, Chris, for that cut across. Thank you. Chris, Sandip's made a comment that the white light output looks quite variable. You might want to comment on that.
Yeah, that's right. So it covers a couple 100 nanometer area from about 430 to 650 or so. So you would need to use filter with it. So there is a region inside the unit itself to put a filter or an excitation filter if you need to. So if you're just doing one a single fluorophore stain, then you can use it perfectly with that. Or you can use, if you've got a filter turret, put filters in there as well. So it's because the unit's specifically designed for the ratiometric calcium imaging, the focus was on the 340, 380, but that broad white light is for anything else people may want to do as well.
Okay, thanks. And then finally, a couple of questions very briefly. Is the UV lights intense enough for uncaging?
I'm not too familiar with uncaging. Has
anyone tried? I imagine it would be. I mean, it's very bright, but
yeah, the UV, especially the 380, is very, very bright. The 340 is a little bit weak. You need to be make sure that things like the objectives allow UV light through as best as possible and use the best filters possible. But the 380 is definitely bright enough, I'd say.
Okay, there are some more questions in the chat box that Chris, maybe you'd like to, in the interest of time, answer directly, if that's okay with folks.